Hi there. It's November the 12th, and we continue our journey through the prophecies of Ezekiel, in Hebrew Yechezkel, meaning the Lord strengthens, and we're reading today the chapters 24 through to 26. In chapter 24, Ezekiel is given a picture of Jerusalem as being like a cooking pot. In fact, the Lord tells Ezekiel to note the actual day when he gives this word, because this is the day that the Lord says to him that Nebuchadnezzar has started the siege of Jerusalem. So it's a terrible day in Jerusalem's history. And the picture of the cooking pot is a picture of Jerusalem being like this stew that is being cooked. It's an awful picture because the people are trapped inside like the contents of the stew and the meat and the bones, and it's going to be totally destroyed. It's going to be poured out. Not just that, but the cooking pot itself is described as being rusty. It's a contaminated pot, and therefore the only way to get the rust off the pot, Ezekiel depicts, is by burning, is by fire, is by getting the rust off the fire. And so there's a picture here not just of the displacement and the destruction of the people, but also of the city itself, of the pot itself. And this is because of the bloodshed that's been going on in Jerusalem, that has been spilled on the rock, and therefore cries out for vengeance to the Lord. And then in verse 15 onwards in chapter 24, something really very poignant, very terrible happens. The Lord says he's going to take away the most precious thing from Ezekiel, and the next day Ezekiel's wife dies. But the Lord says to him he's not to mourn, he's not to lament, he's not to howl, because the Lord wants to use him as a sign to Jerusalem that actually he is going to destroy, and they will not be able to mourn, they will not have time to lament or to mourn over the loss of their most beautiful city, of their most prized possession. And God is going to take away their delights, just as he's taken away the delight of Ezekiel's heart. It seems a very tragic, very poignant picture here, that Ezekiel is going to be a sign to Jerusalem of loss and of mourning and of lament. And then chapter 25 turns its view away from Jerusalem and from Judah and to the surrounding nations. And first of all, there's a prophecy against Amon, which is in the area of modern-day Jordan, to the northeast of Judah. They have rejoiced over Jerusalem's tragedy, and therefore the Lord said he's going to give Rabbah, their capital, over to the Bedouin tribes from the east, who are going to come in with their camels and their tents. And as Rabbah has been made a desolation, they're going to live there, they're going to use up the crops, they're going to overwhelm the Ammonites. And then there's a word against Moab. Moab is to the southeast, and Moab again, because they dismissed Judah, because they looked down on Judah, God is going to bring destruction upon them. And then there's Edom, Edom to the north, because they took revenge on Judah, God is going to repay them. So the surrounding nations, all these surrounding nations, are going to be affected eventually in the same way by the Babylonians. We've already seen Ezekiel refer a couple of chapters later to Amon, chapter earlier to Amon, and the fact that the Babylonians are going to go there after they've been in Jerusalem. But Moab and Edom are going to face the same fate as well. Their land will be devastated. And then lastly, the Philistines on the coast, because of their revenge, they will also be wiped out. They will also be knocked out. And then into chapter 26, there's a whole chapter here on the fate of Sor, the fate of Tyre, we call it Tyre, in Hebrew it's Sor, which was a great trading colony to the northwest of Judah, right on the coast, modern-day Tyre, and in modern Lebanon. And here there was a particularly rich trading colony, trading port, and it was built on an island off the mainland, and it was known as the gateway to the nations, and that's why Ezekiel calls it the gateway to the nations here. And he says that Nebuchadnezzar is going to come against Tyre, and he's going to destroy what are called the princes of the sea, those who are ruling in this part of the coast. And there's going to be a lament coming from the people of the sea over the fall of this great trading nation. And they're going to lament the fact that that the Babylonians have taken over. And then lastly, God says he's going to consign Tyre to the abyss. There's a word here in Hebrew, yor devor, that means the underworld, the abyss, the deep, deep places. And Tyre is going to be left desolate. It says at one point in chapter 26 it's going to be left as a desolate island, just where fishermen stretch out their nets. There's going to be nothing else going on there but fishermen leaving their nets to dry where it was once a great trading place. We see here the power of Babylon that is coming down. It's going from the east but coming down from the north, going through all these nations. We see this terrible upheaval that is going on. But we know also that God has promised that there will be redress. There will be a remnant that survives coming into Judah and Jerusalem. But first God has to clear out every vestige of that which is not compatible with his rule and with his reign, not only in Israel but also in the nations around who have looked down on Jerusalem and looked down on Judah. God is no respecter of persons in that sense. We are blessed that when God looks upon us, he looks through Jesus. He doesn't look upon our sin, he doesn't look upon our lostness, but he sees us as redeemed. He sees us as precious to him. And we can rely on the fact that God will commit himself, God has committed himself to us through Jesus, that we will never suffer this kind of loss. Have a very good November 12th.